Okay, so we are starting our next session that is entitled Rising Above Imperfections. Okay, so I would like to start the session with a story. Once upon a time, what happened? There was a frog. There was a little frog. He was a resident of a big ocean, a big Pacific Ocean. That small frog was a resident of this big ocean. And throughout his life, he had one cherished dream, and that dream was to get admitted in the University of Dr. Frog the Great. So he struggled, he prepared throughout his life to get this opportunity to get admission in the university of this giant Dr. Frog. And one fine day, the results came out. And lo and behold, this person, this little frog, he got the opportunity to get admitted into that giant well of Dr. Frog. So his heart throb was increasing. His heartbeat was increasing. His heart was throbbing faster. Now he is going to come across the role model of his life, that great Dr. Frog, which he has admired throughout his life. He is going to be face to face with that Dr. Frog. So that moment came, and we have this little frog who was little kind of trembling, and he was on the face to face with this Dr. Frog, the PhD of all frogs. So the first question Dr. Frog asked him, "What is your name?" And then this little frog told, "Sir, my name is I'm the little frog, sir." So okay. So where are you coming from? So this little frog answered, "Sir, I'm coming from the Pacific Ocean." So the Dr. Frog told, "Pacific Ocean? That is an interesting name for a well. Well, can you tell me what is the size of your Pacific Ocean well? Is it half of my well?" Then little frog became little surprised. He told, "No, sir, it's bigger." Then that Dr. Frog told, "Do you want to say that your Pacific well is 2 times the size of my well?" This little frog, he became very much shaking. He told, "No, sir. No, sir. Actually, it's bigger." Then this Dr. Frog asked him, "Do you want to tell that your Pacific well is 10 times of my well?" Then this little frog told, "No, sir. It's bigger, sir. It's bigger." Then the Dr. Frog told, "100 times, 1,000 times. Do you want to tell that your Pacific well is 10,000 times of my well?" Then this little frog was just like, "No, sir. It's even bigger. It's even bigger, sir." Then that Dr. Frog told, "Damn it. Such a well cannot exist. I don't have time to listen to your rubbish. If you want to get certified that your Pacific well exists, then I challenge you. You bring your Pacific well inside my well, and our great scientists are going to conduct the research, and they are going to find out, does your Pacific well really exist?" So similarly, my dear friends, what happens when we are living in this world, when we are born in this world, we meet various people, we read different types of books, we form various kind of ideologies. And just like that Dr. Frog, who was kind of contained within his own ideologies, and he could not fathom the size of this giant well, similarly, in our lives also, when we become bound by our ideologies, our conceptions, then we cannot think beyond that. Then that conditionings kind of, they limit our ability to understand things. And in that case, our quest for knowledge just boils down to justification of our own ideas. So in today's session, we are going to see how we can rise beyond this imperfect knowledge. So that is the topic of our discussion today. That is rising beyond imperfections. So here you can see there's a person, he wants to cross a door, but there is a broken ladder, which are called as imperfections. But there is a way by which this person can rise above these imperfections and he can understand the real knowledge. So that shall be our point of discussion in today's session. So here are the topics that we are going to discuss today. First, three means of getting knowledge. Then we are going to see four defects that blind us. Then the perfect means of getting knowledge, authority of Vedas, how Indians were deluded, and then our prime duty. So let us start with this first topic. That is three ways of getting knowledge. 1 second. So I'm just muting all of you so that I don't get disturbed in the middle of the session. If you are having any doubts in the end of the session, we'll have question and answers. Okay. Okay. So three ways of gaining knowledge. So in Sanskrit, means of getting knowledge is called as praman. Okay. So in Sanskrit, we have three kinds of praman, which we see in this world. First is pratyaksha praman. Pratyaksha praman is something which you can verify through your senses, the knowledge that you acquire from direct sense perception. Next is anuman praman. Now there are some things which you cannot directly see, but you can speculate, you can think, you can do some guesswork. Okay, maybe like this or maybe like this. So that is also a bona fide means of getting knowledge. And third thing is shabda praman. That is hearing from the right authority. So one by one, we are going to analyze each of these three means of getting knowledge. First is pratyaksha praman, that is direct sense perception. So all of us, we have five senses: eyes, ear, nose, tongue, finger. Okay, and through these five senses, we acquire different knowledge. These in Sanskrit, this is called as gyan indriyas. Okay, knowledge acquiring senses. So similarly, just like there are five senses, there are five sense objects. There is rasa, rupa, shabda, sparsha, and gandha. Rasa means taste. So from the tongue, you can know the taste of any object. Okay, rasa. Rupa. Rup means the form of any object. By our eyes, we can know about the form of any particular thing. Okay. Rasa, Rupa, Shabda. By listening through the ears, we can listen to the sound and we can understand what the sound is. We can get knowledge through that. Then Shabda Sparsha. By touching something, by feeling something, we can get understanding. Okay. And Gandha. By this nose, we can acquire the smell of any particular object. So these are the five senses which help us in acquiring information. Now, as far as the authenticity and the accuracy of the knowledge is concerned, we can be very much doubtful about this. Just like on the screen, you can see there are two railway roads. Okay. So if you look closely, it appears that these two roads are going to merge at a one particular point. Okay. But as we know that these are two parallel lines, and through our eyes we are thinking that it is going to meet at one particular time, it is not going to meet. Okay. So this is how our eyes are cheating us. Here is another example. So all of us have seen, if you put a pencil inside water, okay, so it appears as if the pencil has gone down a little bit. So our eyes can cheat us sometimes. Now you may ask, भैया आप तो ऐसे बोल रहे हैं, लेकिन हम पेंसिल बाहर निकाल के तो देख सकते हैं कि ये पेंसिल असल में सीधा है, तो this is just optical illusion kind of thing, but we can make sense out of it, right? So how can you say that this is not a bona fide way? So my dear friends, in this case you are putting out the pencil, but oftentimes that is not possible. Let us say a scientist is observing a cell under a microscope. Can he take out the nucleus and observe just one part of that cell? No, it is not possible. Okay. So our senses are dependent on, are limited. Okay. So we cannot perceive this perfect information. Just like in this case, although it appears, our eyes are telling that this is little bent, but through our knowledge we understand that it is not bent. Okay. Similarly, mirage. When I was in third year, I was doing internship in Tata Steel Jamshedpur. Okay. So Jamshedpur is a very hot city and it was summers. So for the first time I saw this mirage. I had heard about this. Okay, there is something called as mirage. On the road it appears as if there is water, but it is not there. But in Tata Steel I practically saw this because the steel plant was so hot. And whenever we used to drive on cars, on buses, on the roads you can see, practically you can see there is water there. On the road you can see water there, but as soon as car goes little nearer, you can see the water vanishing in front of your eyes. So we get confused. What I'm trying to tell here is pratyaksha praman can lead us to false results sometimes. Now here is another thing you can see. If you look at yourself in a convex mirror or a concave mirror, okay? So a thin boy can look very fat. Okay? So this way, if we depend just on our senses, pratyaksha praman, we may get confused. So the lesson here is we cannot acquire complete knowledge using our material senses. Some knowledge we can get better than not knowing anything, but we cannot acquire complete knowledge. We cannot tell what we are seeing is actually believing. Okay? Seeing is believing is popular these days, but that is not very reliable. So next thing we are going to discuss is 4 defects. What are the 4 defects which are inherent to us, and how they cheat us, how they blind us, how they lead us to wrong results. First defect, okay, here are a few examples of what is the result of these 4 defects. For example, one scientist, he conducted some experiments, and based on this, he draw a conclusion. Dalton, he gave a model of atom, Dalton's atomic theory, okay, which was few years later discarded, and Rutherford's model came, which was also discarded by subsequent research, and then Bohr's model came up, okay, and eventually that was also discarded, and now we have quantum mechanical model of atom. Okay, so like this we see the theories in this world keep on changing. Okay, the theories keep on changing because our process of acquiring knowledge is defective. Okay, so what are these 4 defects that are blinding us? First defect is imperfect senses. In Sanskrit, that is called as karana apatava. So imperfect senses. Our senses are not perfect. Okay? For example, here is an example you can see. We can perceive only a certain wavelength. Between 400 to 700 nanometer is what we can perceive. We cannot tell that everything that is existing in nature, we are able to see through our eyes. No. So that is our first defect, imperfect senses. Second defect is tendency to be illusioned. For example, here on the screen you can see that in these 2 trucks, it looks as if the truck on your right, it is having a bottle inside it, and on truck on your left, it is carrying a bag. But actually this is just 3D drawing. It looks as if there is a bottle inside, but there is no bottle inside. So we have a tendency that we can get illusioned. Okay. Next defect is tendency to commit mistakes. All of us have this experience. All of us have committed mistakes in our life in doing experiments in lab and many things. So that is something that is inherent to every human being, tendency to commit mistakes. And the fourth and last is cheating propensity. So we are having these other 3 defects. So we should be limited. Okay, we should understand our limitations. But claiming that I know everything in spite of having these 3 defects, that is what is known as cheating. So all of us, in order to not reveal our real mistakes, we cheat. That is this 4th defect, that is cheating propensity, vipralipsa. So these are the 4 defects that are inherent to each and every human being on this planet. So the first defect is imperfect senses. Now we are going to see little elaborately. Imperfect senses. Our eyes are blind practically out of the range of 400 to 700 nanometer. Different animals have different ranges of sight. Okay. For example, you will find that dogs can see some things which human beings cannot do. Dogs are said to sometimes see ghosts also, which are invisible to human eyes. Okay. So that is an imperfect sense. Another thing, our ears. Our ears can hear only the frequency range of between the frequency range of 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That is also one of the imperfection of our senses. Now here is a comparison between different animals. So human beings, as you can see, from 20 to 20,000. Okay, there are different animals. Elephants can have their own sense of frequency, which they can hear. Similarly, you might not have heard about it, or you might have heard about it. There is something called as dog whistle. Okay, if you blow the whistle, no human being is around will be able to hear, but the dog will be able to hear, and he is going to respond to that. That is very popular in America. That is this dog whistle. So dogs can perceive something which human beings cannot. So that is one of the imperfection within the human beings. Now, okay, someone can tell, okay, our senses are limited, but we have scientists who are dedicated, and they can create mechanism. They can invent different apparatuses, different devices through which our limitations can be overcome. For example, you cannot observe a bacteria or a cell with your naked eyes, But scientists can claim, okay, we have microscope, we have constructed this microscope, so how can you tell that we don't have any means of understanding knowledge? But the truth is, no. Here is what this Nobel Prize winning scientist, physicist Eugen Wigner, he points out. Okay? Even if we photograph stars, eventually we have to take it by our senses, what the photo shows. Okay? Furthermore, without our senses, we cannot handle a camera. Even if we amplified, refined our instruments, and the knowledge is no more perfect than our imperfect senses. Even if you have a perfect device in your hand, first of all, the device is not perfect because it is created by an imperfect human being. In order to handle that imperfect device, you are going to use your imperfect hands. And in order to acquire the information through the imperfect device, which is operated by an imperfect person, you have to use your imperfect eyes. So again, all of these imperfect senses, these cannot help us to, with all these imperfections, we cannot claim that the knowledge which we are acquiring, that is perfect. Okay? Second defect, tendency to be illusioned. Here on the screen, you can see, it looks as if there is a hole inside the road, but actually it is a 3D painting. It is painted by some painter on the road. Okay? So illusion. Okay? All of us have this tendency to become illusioned. Okay. Okay. Here is an example. There is some problem with the PowerPoint. One second. Just let me pause this. So what these two people are going to do, let us imagine that one of the friends, he decides to eat a gulab jamun. Okay? And then he goes and he tastes an orange, and he tastes the orange, and the orange appears to be very sour. Okay? It is very much khatta in taste. Another student conducts the same experiment on this orange, but the problem is he has tasted lemon before. Okay? So he has tasted lemon, and now his taste is very much sour. If he is going to eat that orange, then that taste is going to be appear like a, it is going to appear sweet. Okay? Imagine same experiment done by two different people, but they are getting different results. Why is it happening? Because of there is something called as conditioning. Okay? So we draw conclusions based on what we already know. Okay? So just like in this case, one person has tasted something sweeter, and the same orange is appearing sour to him because of his conditioning. His tongue is now conditioned to that sweet taste, and now he's tasting that orange, and that appears to be sour in taste. Another friend, he has tasted something sour, and he tastes this orange, and that orange appears to be very sweet. Okay? So this is one thing, our tendency to be illusion. So what is actually the taste of this orange? This we cannot know just by our imperfect senses, our tongue, because it is dependent on some sense of conditioning. Okay? Now here are some optical illusions. One second, I'll just show you. Okay. So on the screen you can see, here is an image. Okay. In the image, how many of you can see a young woman? Okay, let me unmute. I hope some of you are able to see this young woman. Okay. Now, if you look closely, you will find an old woman also in this picture. Okay. If you look closely, then the ear of this young woman becomes the eyes for this old woman. Okay. Similarly, the necklace of this young woman becomes the mouth of this old woman. Okay. And the chin, this part of this young woman, becomes the nose of this old woman. Okay. So it is an optical illusion. Okay. Right. Now, how many of you are able to see a triangle inside this? Okay. So there is no triangle actually. If you look closely, there are just three circles, but it appears as if there is a triangle in between. So this is also an optical illusion. Another example of tendency to be illusion. Now you may tell, भैया ये सब आप क्या दिखा रहे हैं? ठीक है? इसका क्या point है? Point is, you see, just like in this case, although the triangle is not there, but it appears that the triangle is there just because of our limited senses, our tendency to be illusion. Similarly, a scientist may observe something inside a cell, and he may think that there is something, but actually it does not exist. Okay? Because these 4 defects are present even for the scientists also. Okay, so I'm skipping a few things. Like this thing. This is an image. This is not a GIF file. Okay? 1 second. Okay. Okay, sorry for muting you all. We don't want any disturbance in between. Okay. So it is not a GIF. It is just an image. Okay. So, but you can see on the screen, it appears as if it is moving. Again, our optical illusion. Okay. So you get the point, right? There are different optical illusions in this. Now, this is something very interesting. Now it appears as if one of the persons on the right is the tallest and the persons on the left is the shortest. But actually, all of these 3 people are having equal heights. Just imagine, just like that, a scientist may observe an image of, some planets or galaxies or stars, and he may think that one particular star is bigger and one particular star is smaller. Just like in this case, a person is appearing bigger, a person is appearing smaller because of this illusion. Okay. Oh, there are some other examples. Okay. Third defect, that is the tendency to commit mistakes. Now here are examples of some of the greatest mistakes, some of the mistakes conducted by scientists all over the world. Brain was thought of an organ to cool the body. Okay. Just few centuries ago, scientists used to believe that brain was just an organ to cool the blood. Another scientist, he concluded that the pituitary gland is the master gland. That is gland controls all other glands of this body. That was considered to be a useless tissue in the human body, vestige organ. Just imagine if a scientist understanding this pituitary gland to be a vestige or useless organ, if you would have removed that person, the person might have, died. So these are some widely inaccurate accounts in research. Values of Hubble constant has been changed 3 times. Some scientists jokingly tell it is a Hubble constant or Hubble variable. So according to this Hubble theory, the planets are moving away from each other by, by a distance that is proportional to something square of the distance between them. Okay. But the value of this constant also has been changed 3 times. Okay. And this Hubble constant is not something ordinary. Okay. It is a cosmic yardstick. So just like you are measuring the length of a room, but the length of your scale is changing. The length of scale is not fixed. It is not 15 centimeter. One instant it is 15 centimeter, other instant it is 20 centimeter. So can you claim that the length that you have calculated using this scale that is changing, that is correct? So similarly, all the astronomical conclusions become a great question mark because the yardstick that they are using, that is not constant. Okay. So these are some of the widely incorrect accounts in research. Now, fourth and most dangerous of all is the cheating propensity. It is told by a Nobel Prize winning scientist that the facts which we don't like, we call them as theories, and the theories which we like, we call them as facts. Okay. So if you like a particular theory, it is consistent with your ideas. What you are going to tell? You are going to tell that, okay, it is not just a theory, it is a fact. Okay. And some facts which you can clearly see, but still you don't like the conclusion, you are going to claim that, no, it's just a theory. That is what one of the scientists tell. Similarly, when this Darwin's theory came up, so Darwin predicted that in the future, the fossils of the 2 connecting species, okay, so the missing links, that is what he called. So from one species, it gets transformed to another, and in between there will be some species, and the discovery of the fossils of those intermediate links is going to be a testimony for my research, testimony for my theory. So in order to prove Darwin's theory, so many false fossils were created throughout the world. Here is one of the examples, the Piltdown Man. It was claimed to be evidence of a missing link. Into 1912, this came up in public and people became very happy. Now Darwin's theory is validated. But few years later, 1953, almost after 40 years, that fraud got revealed. That ultimately it was a human skull, and they had filed the jaw in such a way that it looks like a ape. Okay. Now here's a short video I'd like to show you.
subject that they can even invent very different faces for the same skull. The three entirely different reconstructions made for the fossil called in Xanthropus is a famous example showing how persistent evolutionists are in producing these false masks. Another intermediate transitional form fabricated by evolutionists was the Nebraska man. This was cooked up in 1922 on the basis of a single fossil tooth. The evolutionists did not neglect to give it an ostentatious Latin name, Asparapithecus haralcuca, or to make imaginary drawings related to it. It was soon revealed that the tooth that had been the source of inspiration for Nebraska man in fact belonged to a wild pig. Many other fossil skulls have been presented as great evidence for evolution failed one by one. Neanderthal man was advanced as evidence in 1856, dismissed in 1960. Piltdown man was advanced as evidence in 1912, dismissed in 1953. Xanthropus was advanced as evidence in 1959, dismissed in 1960. Ramapithecus was advanced as evidence in 1964, dismissed in 1979. Evolutionists go so far in this subject that they can even invent very different faces.
So here are a few evidences which shows that this cheating propensity is not only limited to common students like all of us, who just mark the readings wrong just to get the right result and just get through this lab. Even big scientists are also doing this. So that is the fourth defect, that is cheating propensity. Now here is an interesting story. 6 blind men and 1 wise man. So once upon a time, what happened? All of us have heard this story, right? That 6 blind men, they come together and they form different theories how an elephant looks like. So someone grabs the tail, someone grabs the legs, someone grabs the belly of that elephant, someone grabs the teeth, someone grabs the trunk, someone just rides on the elephant and just takes on his ears. And then different theories are proposed. One man claims that, okay, the elephant looks like a snake. It must be a long snake, because that is what was the conclusion of his understanding, that this elephant is a snake. Another man who was touching the tail, he came to the conclusion that this elephant is actually the shape of a rope. Similarly, one man concluded that it is like a X, one who was touching the ears. Someone concluded it is like a huge wall. Someone claimed that it is like an arrow because he was holding the tooth pointed like an arrow. Someone concluded no, it is just like a big tree. So actually, which of them is correct? So the right process to understand this is we have to understand that we are limited, and we have to listen to a person, a wise person who is having eyes, who can see the whole picture and who can draw the complete picture of the elephant and explain, okay, the tail is like this. One person was holding tail, that is why he came to this conclusion. One person was holding leg, that is why his leg is like a trunk. Okay. So all of us have to understand our limitations, and we have to understand, and in order to solve the problems of life, we need the guidance of the people who have the eyes to see the world according to the perfect knowledge. So this way we conclude how the second means of getting knowledge, that theories based on observation and guesswork, anuman praman, guesswork, that cannot lead to perfect conclusion. Just like this, I'm not claiming that these people are not expert in their fields. These people are experts. But the problem is we have to understand that our observations, our guesswork, our speculation, it is having some limitation. There's another interesting story. Once upon a time, what happened? a group of doctors, they were together, and each of these doctor was expert in a different field. Someone was a psychologist, someone was a neurosurgeon, someone was orthopedic. Okay? So all of them were together, and they observed that was a man who was limping. ठीक है, एक आदमी उधर से लंगड़ा के जा रहा था. So one of the persons who was a psychologist, he told actually he's a mad person, and there is a kind of madness in which a person starts walking like this. So another scientist who was a neurosurgeon, he told no, he's not a mad person. Actually, he has some problem in his wiring inside his brain. That is why he is walking like this. There's a particular kind of nerves that if they don't function properly, then the person limps in this kind of style. Third person who was an orthopedic, he told no, actually all of you are wrong. I have the actual cause of this limping man. The cause of his limping is because he has some pain in his joints. Okay? And because of that pain in his joints, he's limping like this. So there was discussion, and all of them were fighting. No, it is like this. I'm telling you, it is like this. No, maybe like that. Like this, they were discussing. One person told, why don't we go and ask that person? Then they called him. Abhe idhar aa. Then that person came. Then one of them introduced. देखो तेरे अंदर क्या प्रॉब्लम है? ये न्यूरोसर्जन है. ये बता रहा है तुम्हारे दिमाग का नस ढीला है. ये बोल रहा है तू पागल है. ये बोल रहा है तेरे पैर में ये प्रॉब्लम है. अब तू बता तेरे अंदर क्या प्रॉब्लम है? This person told me मेरे अंदर कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है भाई. This foot, अरे तो तू लंगड़ा क्यों रहा है? Then the man told, अरे मेरा चप्पल टूट गया है and I am searching for a mochi. So all of them had a good laugh. So like this, similarly, all of them, although they observed the same thing and they were expert in their fields, but just the results based on our guesswork, that cannot be perfect. So Anuman Praman, second means of getting knowledge, that cannot lead us to perfect source. So Darwin's theory of species is classic example of this. Whole of this theory is just based on guesswork. There's no substantial evidence for this, or whatever is the evidence that evolutionists claim, that evidence is just reduced to microbiology, that okay, living beings adapt according to the environment. That is an established fact. But to claim that this proves the entire variety that is existing in nature, that is something that is extrapolation beyond the limits of science. That is just not scientific. That is not a scientific idea. So here is what Darwin writes in his own book. I am a firm believer that without speculation there is no good work and original observation. After 5 years of work, I allowed myself to speculate on the subject and draw up some short notes, which I enlarged in 1844 into a sketch of conclusions which seemed to me probable. So here Darwin is accepting that his theory is based on speculation, Anuman Praman. Here is what an interesting paragraph taken from his book. In the North America, the black bear was seen swimming in hours with his mouth wide open, okay, thus catching like a whale insects in water. In so extreme a case as this, if the supply of insects were constant and if better adapted competitors did not really exist, I can see no difficulty in a race of bears by natural selection, more and more aquatic in their structure and habits, with larger and larger mouths, till a creator was produced as monstrous as a whale. Now, do you think it is a scientific idea how a bear is turning into a whale? Bear is kind of this much size. Okay? This much size is a bear, and whale is practically at least 12 times larger than this. How can something as complicated as a whale come out from a bear? So this theory is just based on speculation. Now here is something interesting. If really human beings evolved from monkeys, then we expect that if you dig out the fossils, then what you are going to observe, that on the topmost layer the newer species are going to be there, and as you dig deeper and deeper and deeper, then more simpler and more simpler versions of life forms you are able to find. But according to the records of rocks, human beings and apes existed simultaneously. Their fossils are found in the same strata. What it goes to show that human beings and apes, they existed simultaneously in this world. It is not that there were apes at certain point of time and eventually they evolved into humans. No, that is not what the fossil records show. Now some of you can tell, okay, our truth is imperfect, but what is the problem in making research? By doing research, we are arriving at better and better conclusions. Earlier our theory was false, now we have a better theory. That also may be false in future, but that is at least better than the previous one. No, the answer is no. Why? Because these mistakes are not something like innocent mistakes of a child. These mistakes can cause lot of problems for a lot of people. Like here are a few examples. Bisleri bottle, it is a substitute for glass bottle, but the problem is if we depend only on Bisleri bottles, then our health is going to be affected. These are supposed to have, they are having some carcinogens in this. If you store a water for more than 6 months inside a bottle, the water turns poisonous. Similarly, mobile phone. Nowadays, everyone is using this mobile phone. Our civilization is completely dependent on this mobile phone. Without a mobile phone, a person cannot, survive in a city. What to speak of a city, even in villages, person cannot survive. Few centuries ago, it was not like this. But the same mobile phone has caused problems, and it can affect different parts of the body. Like it can affect the brain, it can affect the heart, it can lead to impotency also. And the problem is if you keep it below your knee, then the ringtone will not reach your ears. Like, so yeah, scientific research is creating problem. During the bubonic plague, now here is a very classic example. What happened in the 15th century, this disease called as bubonic plague was spreading in Europe. Okay? And a group of scientists, they just conducted some research and they came to a conclusion that this bubonic plague is called by cats. Okay. So this bubonic plague is caused by cats. So eventually everyone became happy. Now we have the cure. Okay. And everywhere throughout Europe, everyone started to kill the cats. Shoot at sight. जैसे ही बिल्ली देखे उसको मार दो. But something interesting. 1 week after that, they observed that the bubonic plague cases increased rapidly instead of decreasing. Then the scientists were called again. What is the research you are telling that cats are the cause? Now cats are not there, but still the disease is increasing. Then they again conducted some research, and this time they concluded, oh, sorry, we did some mistake in our research. Cats are not the cause of bubonic plague. Rats are the actual cause. Okay? But there was a problem. There were rats everywhere, but there was no cat to kill them. And that is how bubonic plague practically wiped out 1/3 of the population of Europe. And in some cities, in London, half of the population was gone. Now you cannot imagine. This just look like aesthetics. ठीक है, आधे लोग मर गए, क्या हो गया? But imagine if you are living in a house with your family, and next day morning you wake up and half of your family members are dead. Or what to speak of family members? Even while you are staying in college, let us say next morning you wake up and half of your wing is gone, dead. What will be your situation? And all of these mistakes is caused by, the mistakes in the scientists. All of this is caused by mistakes caused by the scientists. So I'm not criticizing science. I'm not telling that science is useless or science cannot help us to know the truth. Science does help us, but the problem is the conclusions that we are arriving at using science, we cannot claim that this is the ultimate and there is nothing beyond this. Or to think that the questions which science cannot answer are not worth asking. This is arrogance of the highest degree, and this is what we are strongly against. So half knowledge is a dangerous thing. Now here is an example. Here is a short video I'll show you. this was the video. So you see, the point of this video was, yeah. So just like a person is given with a machine, but if he does not, read the manual, if he does not understand how to operate a machine, that can create bigger problems. That can create a lot of problems. Okay. So similarly, when we are living in this world, we are given this human body, we are given this natural resources that are around us. If we don't understand from the manufacturer how we are supposed to operate this machine, our situation will be something like this cartoon character. Okay, we'll operate something, we'll use our brains and we'll do something here and there, and eventually we'll suffer because we don't understand what was the machine meant for and how we are supposed to use this. Okay, so for every machine that we have, there comes a manual. Okay, so manual is supposed to tell you four things. First thing is, what is the machine supposed to do, what is the purpose of the machine. Second, how to operate the machine, how not to operate the machine, and fourth thing, if something goes wrong, then how to fix this. These are the four purposes of a manual. First thing, purpose of the machine, how to use it, how not to use it, and if there is something wrong in the system, how to correct it. Okay, so similarly, for our lives, we are given this human form of life. Is there a manual which manufacturer has given us to acquire perfect knowledge, to understand what is the purpose of life, to understand what is how we are supposed to use this life and how we are supposed to not use this life, and what if something goes wrong in our lives, what is the correct solution? So the answer is yes, God has given us some manuals. And that brings us to the third means of getting knowledge, that is Shabda Praman, that is hearing from authority. Now Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita 4.2, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo vidu. So Lord Krishna is telling how to get perfect knowledge. The perfect knowledge can be got from the parampara system, which is disciplic succession. We will be discussing in subsequent slides. So how can a child know its father? Let us say a small child is there and he does not know who his father is. So he can go to the scientists, and scientists can tell, okay, uh, we'll segregate the population into two halves. So 7 billion people upon 2. So 3.5 billion people are males. So one of them is your father. Okay, one of them is your father. Now, how to know who is your father? So we'll conduct some DNA test on these 3.5 billion people. Okay, on obviously someone can use intelligence and reduce this set to a different. You can ask the age of the child, and some population can be sorted. Now, even after conducting this test, DNA test for all the persons on this planet, there will be it will, first of all, it will take around 800 years to conduct this test. Okay, and then you'll end up with a lot of 200 men who are, out of which one of them is likely to be the father of this child. So out of 200 men he has to personally go and ask him, are you my father, are you my father, are you my father? And that also takes 800 years. So the child will be long gone. After that, years later, they will come to conclusion that okay, this person was your father. So like this. But there is a quicker method to understand who is the father, that is just ask the mother. Okay, so just like you just go and approach a mother and ask who is my father, and the mother can just tell, okay, this person is your father. Okay, so that is the difference between inductive knowledge and deductive knowledge. Inductive knowledge is the knowledge acquired from pratyaksha praman and anuman praman, which all the modern scientific things are based on. Scientific research is based on these two things, pratyaksha praman and anuman praman. Third way of getting knowledge is shabda praman, that is just hear from the authority, just hear from a person who knows everything perfectly, and that is the means of deductive knowledge, and that is where the shastras come in the picture. So just like in this case, this mother is connecting the child to the father. Similarly, Vedas are also called as mother. In Sanskrit, that is called as Ved Mata. So just like a mother connects the child to the father, similarly Vedas connect us, who are the children of God, to God, who is the Supreme Father. Now someone can tell, भैया आपने तो बहुत अच्छा इंक्वायरी किया प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण का और अनुमान प्रमाण का, लेकिन हम लोग इस पे ऑथोरिटेटिवली कैसे मान सकते हैं कि आप जो बोल रहे हो वो सच है? ठीक है, so like this. So here are some of the infallible Vedic predictions. Vedic knowledge is so authoritative that the knowledge uh, in the Vedas, so many things are predicted that is actually coming up true. Like here are a few predictions. Gautam Buddha, he came in the 563 BC. Okay? And he was predicted in Srimad Bhagavatam that was written 5000 years ago. Gautam Buddha, we have given the exact verse number. You can just go and watch it 1.3.24. Okay. Similarly, another personality, Chanakya, he came in 370 BC. He was also predicted in the same scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam. Similarly, Ashok also came in the 3rd century BC. He was also predicted in Srimad Bhagavatam. Similarly, there are predictions about Jesus Christ. There is prediction about Prophet Muhammad in Bhavishya Puran. And there is prediction about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who came 1486 AD, just recently. And all of these things are predicted in scriptures which were written thousands of years ago. That is how accurate our Vedic predictions are. Now, here are some of the Vedic truths which the modern science is slowly discovering. Plants have life. This is a very recent conclusion. Just 1 century ago, approximately 1 century ago, Indian scientist J.C. Bose, he draw this conclusion based on his observations that plants also have life. But plants having life is talked about in the scriptures from many centuries ago. Similarly, embryology as a science of how a fetus grows inside the womb of a mother, that is a very recent phenomenon. But this science was known to our great sages who have written down it in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 3rd canto, 33rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is description of how the child grows inside the womb of a mother. In fact, I have a short video. And not only that, the science at that time was so much advanced that not only you are able to understand what happens to the child in the womb, that's those sages knew even about what is the thinking of the child.
Usable, then the body is finished and the soul again enters another body. This is called transmigration.
Now here is a
What is the
description.
next body you are going to get? You must have information.
चार पॉइंट निकल गया, जहाँ तक समझ में आ गया बोलो। मैक्सिमम ज्यादा से ज्यादा 4 पॉइंट। ग्राफ पेपर में बना तो एक एक पॉइंट लेते चलो ऐसा कि ताकि मतलब रिपीटर आते जाए तो वो अच्छा लगेगा। नहीं आया तो अगर टाइम करना है तो अपना
Where are you right now? You're actually in the middle of the workshop right now, sleeping. This is your first lesson in training.
So you see, this is what has happened to all of us. Okay? When we are in the womb of our mother, everyone undergoes through these changes. And not only Srimad Bhagavatam tells that what happens at what time, it also tells about the consciousness of a child who is inside the womb of a mother. What is his thinking? What are his prayers? Everything is mentioned in great details. Modern science, with all our tools, we are just able to analyze some small steps inside the whole process. And Srimad Bhagavatam, we can understand that that is a source of perfect information because it is explaining everything. Next is cow dung and cow products. See, throughout our Vedic scriptures, cow is glorified and how cow dung is so pure. And recently, scientists came to know that actually cow dung has some antiseptic properties. Now, someone can tell, okay, in India, cow is worshipable. In America, dog is worshipable. What is difference? In America, they have pet dogs. They don't like cows. They kill cows. They have pets as dogs. So something interesting. You see, cow's dung that is having a characteristic fragrance. Okay? That is very sweet to smell for Indians. Okay? And if you put it inside, you when you go to your villages, you will find many people. You know they paint their walls with the dung of a cow. Okay? And that creates a very that has an antiseptic effect, and you, by that smell, the flies are not going to come. Okay? Now, can you imagine? Uh, can you imagine any person, no matter how much he loves his dog, can he take a stool of a dog and rub on the wall of his his house. So that is something foolish to imagine. And what to speak of dog milk or dog ghee? No one would want that. Okay? So that is why cows are like our mothers. Okay? Because they give us milk, their position is just like our mother, and that is why this slaughtering process and these things has to be stopped. Is something that is not acceptable in the human society. Similarly, Ayurveda's profound science. Patanjali is growing so much. Ayurvedic information, Ayurvedic medicines are the tools of sustainable health. Modern day allopathy, that is just like killing a mosquito with nuclear bomb. So obviously the mosquito will be killed, but at what cost? So, but Ayurvedas talk about correctly balancing our body in harmony with the nature in such a way that you know sustainably our body can be taken care, not just destroy one thing, matlab cure a disease at the cost of so many other things like this. Similarly, yogas, meditation, Vastu Shastra, in many European countries like Germany and all, still till date, the buildings that are constructed, that is in accordance with the Vastu Shastras. Because Vastu Shastra was written so in such a way that, the house should be pointing towards this direction, the bedroom should be in this direction, toilet and kitchen should have this much distance. So all of this was very scientific in accordance with the, magnetic field of the earth, and they had all these calculations like this. Sanskrit language. Nowadays people say that Sanskrit is the most suitable language for programming. You can clearly see in English alphabets, there is no correlation between what you write and what you speak. For example, same alphabet C can be pronounced sometimes as sa, sometimes as ka. But in Sanskrit, whatever is written, that has a single pronunciation. And that is why Sanskrit is a better language, easier language for anyone to understand. Similarly, the science of flying machines, astrology. Astrology nowadays, you don't have bona fide astrologers, but if you happen to meet a bona fide astrologer, just by looking at you, he can tell you he can tell you your name, he can tell you what all problems you are having right now, and he can predict your future also. I had a friend, uh, uh, one astrologer had predicted that when you will be 25 years of your age, you will lose your father, and strikingly same year his father died. So there are astrology is a bona fide science, Vedic science. Similarly, astronomy, metallurgy, everything is there in the Vedas. These are some of the facts which modern sciences slowly, they are rediscovering the things. Now, another interesting, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is an entire chapter dedicated to the symptoms of Kali Yuga. And when the Srimad Bhagavatam was written, 5,000 years ago, and that has predicted that these things are going to happen in the future. So there is this shloka, Tatasyanum dinam dharma satya shocha shamadaya kalena balina rajan nakshanti ayur balam smriti. So these things are going to get reduced in this Kali Yuga. O king, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life. These are the things will diminish day by day. Anudinam. Every day these things will keep on decreasing under the powerful influence of Kali. And this practically you can see. Let us analyze all of this one by one. Religion. Practically these days, religion is just some reduced to just some rituals. People are just blindly following some rituals without understanding the essence. A Brahmana is not a Brahmana by character. A Brahmana is just a Brahmana by wearing some thread and being born in a particular family. He is not having any characteristic of a Brahmana. Still, such people are being claimed as big religionists. Truthfulness. Earlier, people used to have this patthar ka lakir. Okay, pran jaye par vachan na jaye. But nowadays, they are not having patthar ka lakir. Patthar ka lakir means if you write on stone, it is going to stay there for a long time. And that is how people's words used to be there. Whatever they used to speak, that they must do. That is something. But nowadays, that is not patthar ka lakir, that is pani ka lakir. So their words are going to remain as long as there is water on this rock. So as soon as water evaporates, their words change, the person change. Similarly, cleanliness. Nowadays, people have a lot of unclean habits. When I was in IIT, the record in my wing was 1 month without bath. Okay? So cleanliness, as we can observe in this world, cleanliness is reducing every day. Tolerance. You see, nowadays, earlier days, people used to be so much tolerant. You read from Mahabharat, you read from Ramayana, the characters used to be so much tolerant. For example, Mother Sita, she blamed Lakshman that Lakshman has served Mother Sita for 25 years, but still she tells, when he was denying to go and help Lord Ram when this marriage called, so Lakshman understood that Lord Ram cannot be in any trouble, but still Mother Sita doubted his character. But still Lakshman tolerated that insult. In spite of dedicating his life, the person whom he is dedicating his life to, that is not having faith on him. And that extreme situation also, people in the earlier times, they had the capability of tolerating it. Nowadays, what we are having, what we are seeing in this world, love at first sight and divorce at first fight. People are becoming so much intolerant. Similarly, mercy. You can see practically so many slaughterhouses are maintained around the world. That is something that is against the principle of this mercy. Duration of life. So earlier, people used to live for hundreds of years. Now, average lifespan is reduced to just 60 years. And nowadays, even less than that. People who are working in the corporate sector, practically after 40 years, they start becoming old. They are having this, spine pain and spondylitis, and many times they have arthritis also. I was surprised one time, one 20-year-old boy, when we had a session, so everyone was sitting around, and then he asked, can I get a chair? So I asked him, oh, what is the problem, why you can't sit down? So he told, I have arthritis. I asked, really, you are 20 years old and you have arthritis? So this way we see how the duration of life is decreasing, and practically it is predicted that by the end of Kali Yuga, a person who is living 20 years will be supposed to have a long, will be supposed to live a very long life. 20 years will be the duration of life. By the time Kali Yuga ends, the lifespan of human beings is going to reduce to 20 years. Physical strength of people is going to get reduced. What to speak of comparison with the previous ages people. Even a few centuries ago, if you go to Maharashtra, there in the museum, you can find the sword of Chhatrapati Shivaji. And that sword is so heavy, practically it is 80 kgs. You cannot even lift it. But people in that time had so much strength that not only they could lift it, they could kill people. They used to fight using these swords. So the physical strength of the people is decreasing every day. Memory. Earlier, the Vedas were not written down because people just used to hear and they used to remember everything. But nowadays, even to remember a mobile number, we cannot remember it. We just need our phones or somewhere to write it down. So our memory span has reduced so much. And that is the reason why scriptures had to be written down. Before Kali Yuga, scriptures were not written down because people used to just remember everything. They were called Shruti-dhara, one who remembers just by hearing. But nowadays, the attention span and memory of people is decreasing so much. And that is why 5,000 years ago, Vyasdev wrote down the scriptures, wrote down the Vedas and Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vedic scriptures so that people of Kali Yuga can get benefited. Now you can tell, okay, Vedas are bona fide, but how can you be sure that any person who is speaking from the Vedas is claiming to speak from the Vedas? How you are going to verify this? So there is a check called as Guru Sadhu Shastra check. Okay. So Guru is the present person who is teaching you this. Sadhu are the previous sages who have practiced the same Shastric principles, and Shastra is the original word of God. Okay. So there is this triangle. So Guru can be checked using Sadhu and Shastra. So what this person is speaking, is it in line with what the Shastras speak? Is it in line with what previous sages, the Gurus before him, have spoken? That is the check. That is called as Guru Sadhu Shastra check. So there is this analogy given here. Okay. So Shastras, Guru is like there is something called as a powerhouse, and there are intermediate transmission lines, and that is how the power reaches to every house. Okay. So there are step up transformers, step down transformers involved in between, and the source of that power is one place, that is powerhouse. Okay. So that is Shastras, directly the words of God. Okay. And the power get transmitted through the transmission lines. So the power it represents that the words of Shastras are followed by people in the previous ages, and they are like this transmission lines who have transmitted the current, the flow of this Vedic knowledge through them. Okay? And when the power reaches to the modern age, it is channelized, it is made accessible to us through a guru. Okay? So here is this analogy. So guru, then the gurus before him, they are the this category of sadhu, and original word of gods, that is Shastra. Okay. So just like for bona fide education, there are bona fide universities. Okay. Any person, let us say, if you have to get operated, if you have to undergo some heart surgery, so and a person comes looking like a doctor, and he tells, okay, I can perform your surgery. So an intelligent person will inquire, okay, where you studied, show me your degree, which college you graduated from, which books you referred to. So just like in order to evaluate the quality of a doctor, you have to do this testing, which college he went to, is that college authorized, which books you have read, are these the real bona fide books. Similarly, in the beginning of creation, 4 sampradayas, which are like this educational institutions for this Vedic knowledge, were created by God. And these are the prominent acharyas of these 4, the initial gurus of these 4 sampradayas. So there is Shri Sampradaya, for whom Lakshmi ji is the chief guru. There is Brahma Sampradaya, in which Lord Brahma is the chief guru. There is Rudra Sampradaya, on which Lord Shiva is the chief guru. And there is Chatush Kumar Sampradaya, in which the 4 intelligent sons of Brahma, Chatush Kumaras, are the guru. Okay. And there are the name of 4 prominent acharyas who have come in these 4 lines. So these names you can remember from your history books, right? Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarka Swami. These are the bona fide, most famous acharyas of these 4 sampradayas. So the process of transmission of Vedic knowledge is through hearing. Okay. So one person understands from his guru, and then he teaches to his disciples, and that is how this flow of knowledge takes place. So in the beginning of creation, one of the sampradayas is Brahma Sampradaya. So we are drawing this, how the knowledge went down, the disciplic succession of this. This is called as disciplic succession. Okay? The Guru Shishya Parampara. So in the beginning of creation, Lord Krishna gave this knowledge to Brahmaji, who is the first created being in this universe. Then Brahmaji instructed Narad Muni. Okay? Then Narad Muni gave these teachings to Vyasdev. Vyasdev gave these teachings to Madhvacharya, and that is how this disciplic succession keeps on coming. And the same disciplic succession, Lord Chaitanya comes, Lord Krishna, who is incarnated in the form of Lord Chaitanya, and then he has his disciples, and now we are following the same tradition. So you can, any person who is telling you something about Vedas, who is telling something about scriptures, you should inquire. First thing you should inquire about him is which sampradaya you belong. Is it a bona fide sampradaya? Just like you cannot perform you will not be willing to perform your heart operation by a person who is not authorized by by a bona fide college. Similarly, we should not hear from people who are not authorized, who are not acquired this knowledge in the disciplic succession. Now, you may ask this: if the Vedic society was so glorious, then what went so wrong that modern day many Indians are turning atheists, and they are propagating these atheistic ideas? Okay? And people have lost faith from the scriptures. Where it all went wrong? So it is a long story. Okay? So I'll start from the somewhere in between. In the 15th century, what happened? The church got divided into Catholics and Romans, and some of the European countries were led by these Catholic and Protestants. Okay? So some of these countries where Protestants were popular, some of the countries where Catholics were popular. Okay? And eventually, all of them felt that we need to evangelize the world. Evangelize the world means we have to spread the message of Christianity throughout the world, and practically whole of the world is barbaric, nomadic, and it is our duty, because we are the best civilization in the world, it is our duty to civilize other parts of the world. So there were missionaries sent from the Europe to different parts of the world, and That is how we hear that India was discovered by Vasco da Gama. So he was a Portuguese. He came to India and he discovered the sea route to India. And through that sea route, eventually different territories came. And there was constant fight between this Catholics and this Protestants. So they are fighting amongst each other within the Europe and within the colonies also that they were setting in different parts of the world. And eventually in India, the British gained the monopoly. Now, when the Britishers came to India, they were shocked. They used to think that our civilization, the British civilization, is the most advanced in this world. And practically rest of the world was nomadic, barbarous. But here they came and they saw that this culture of India, this Vedic culture is so rich. It has it has its own set of literature. It has its own history that traces years, thousands and thousands of years ago. So all the European civilization, their origin can be traced to Greek civilization that existed around 2,000-3,000 years ago. Okay? And there was Aristotle, there was Socrates, and eventually Jesus Christ came, and like this. So that is what they used to think that this is how civilization spread all over the world. But here, when they studied the itihasas written by Vedic scholars, they were amazed that this Indian civilization is so rich and it is tracing much beyond that this Greek civilization also. And this was something that was really unacceptable for the Britishers. It hit their superiority complex like anything. It was not consistent with their superiority complex. They could not digest how can the civilization be more rich than ours. Okay? And in order to adjust that, some Indologists were sent to India. And in order to establish that Britishers were superior to Indians, but how to prove this? How you are going to prove this point that British civilization is better to Indian civilization? So this Indologist, they started studying the scriptures and they started to explain things in such a way that our scriptures look very primitive, and Indians lose their faith from their scriptures. And it also had a not only to establish their supremacy, it also had a political agenda also behind this. So Britishers, they came to India, they had to rule India, and in order to rule a particular country, you require to gain the confidence of the people. Now, how people of India are going to put faith in the Britishers? Because by Vedic standards, a person who is eating meat, a person who is womanizing, a person who is a drunkard, that person is considered fallen by the society, and that person is considered like an outcast. And the Britishers were doing all these things. So how can such a person be accepted as the leader of the society? So that is why Britishers thought that we have to change the framework of these Indians. We have to change the parameters by which they evaluate things. And for that, we have to change the framework, their worldview, and we have to present our worldview to them. And in that process, we'll make them understand that, okay, you are inferior, we are superior. And based on our parameters, we will establish this. And that is how this theory came up. That is Aryan invasion theory. Okay. So what is this Aryan invasion theory? So these people, rather than claiming that, okay, there was a civilization in India and from India the civilization spread all over the world, this was unacceptable to them. So they claimed that, okay, British and all other European civilizations and the Indian civilization have a common ancestor, and that they called as Aryan. And these Aryans brought with them the knowledge of the Vedas, and before that the knowledge of Vedas are not there in the Indians. And that is why we Britishers and you Indians are like long lost brothers. And in that process, we have gained something, we have gained science and technology. So we are just coming to share it with you. But in that process, what happened? You see, people lost the faith on scriptures. So Muslims came, they attacked India, they destroyed the temples. In thousands, they destroyed the temples. But what the Britishers did was something much worse, much damaging to our culture than what the Islamic people did. They destroyed the faith of people from the temple. That is something that is a greater damage than just destroying the temple. And this is what is Aryan invasion theory. All of this is a false theory. Why Aryan invasion theory is a false theory? because you see, you understand Sanskrit grammar. The Sanskrit grammar is much superior to Latin grammar, and it is much more refined and it is much more aesthetic. So the logical inference would be that this Sanskrit is the root of all other languages. Just like this Latin, you can think in Latin words, they had some striking similarities with Sanskrit. For example, Pitri means father, and Pitri becomes pater in Latin, and that pater becomes father in English. Similarly, matri is a Sanskrit word. It becomes matter in Latin and then mother in English. So like this, you can trace the languages and you will find that these striking similarities are there between Greek language and Sanskrit was more refined. So the logical inference will be Sanskrit is the source of all this. But this was not acceptable to the Britishers, and that is why they concocted this theory, Aryan invasion theory, that eventually this central part of Europe, that was somewhere this Aryans used to live, but nowhere people could find evidences supporting that argument that there is a class of people called as Aryans who were advanced and who used to travel around the world and they used to civilize people. So they claim that, okay, Aryans were a nomadic tribe. Okay. Now there is a problem with this argument. Why Aryans cannot be considered as a nomadic tribe? If there is a tribe like this that is propagating the language of Sanskrit grammar, just basic Panini grammar, in order to master that you need 12 years. And generally you see the tribes that are roaming around, they have a lot of wisdom from the experiences in this world, but what they lack is they cannot have a complicated language like Sanskrit of their own. So Aryan invasion theory was a false theory created just to break the faith of Indians from the scriptures. And that is how this India started started to go away from this Vedic sciences. People lost the faith on scriptures. But what is the correct theory? As mentioned in the scriptures, India was the topmost country in this world. Why we are telling this? The ruler of the whole world, his capital was in Hastinapur, and the ruler of Hastinapur was the ruler of the whole world, including the oceans. And all of these things are mentioned in the scriptures. And eventually, after the Kurukshetra war, the descendants of Pandavas, after Pandavas gave the kingdom to Parikshit Maharaj and they eventually retired, then what happened? After they retired, the descendants of Parikshit Maharaj, they slowly decided to deviate from the Vedic teachings, and that is how these different deviations came up in different parts of the world. Greek civilization, all the civilizations are just descendants from this Vedic civilization. That is the actual understanding that we get from the scriptures. Now, having understanding this, it comes to it. We have to understand what is our duty. What is our duty as a citizen of India? What is our duty as a messenger of God who have received this knowledge, this perfect Vedic knowledge? It is given to Indians because Indians had a higher caliber. We will see this in our subsequent session. So, duty of every Indian. Lord Chaitanya, in a very famous shloka, he tells that Bharat Bhumite Haila Manushya Janmajar, Janma Sarthak Kari Karo Paropkar. One who has taken his birth as a human being in the land of India should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all people. That is the duty of every Indian. So first we have to make our lives very exemplary by following the teachings of the Vedas, and then we can inspire others also to follow the same scriptures. So Janma Sarthak Kari, first you make our life successful by understanding the scriptures, and then Kara Paropkar, by do the benefit the rest of the world. One time Srila Prabhupada was giving class somewhere in India, and one question was asked, why are there so many problems in this world? Why countries are at war with each other? Why there are so many problems? Countries are fighting with each other. There is so much terrorism. There is so much conflict. So Prabhupada answered it very clearly. It is because Indians have failed to their duty. Indians have failed in their duty. Indians were given the higher knowledge of the Vedas, but rather than spreading that knowledge, they got deviated, and we have become so petty in our ambitions. We are just concerned with ourselves. If everyone starts thinking like this, then what is going to happen to this world? So it is duty of every Indian that he understand the scriptures very scientifically and he draws conclusion, and that is going to benefit him and that is going to benefit the rest of the world. So thank you very much. This was the session all about. So here is an introduction of our next session. So in this today's session, we have established. Okay. So in today's session, we have established the authority of Shabda Praman over other means of getting knowledge. And from next session onwards, we will be continuing with this Shabda Praman. So all our arguments and everything, we'll analyze the scriptures from a scientific perspective. So next session is science of soul. What is actually our identity? Are we just this body which we look in the mirrors, or there is a metaphysical identity for us? So this shall be the point of our discussion in next session. So thank you very much.